My name is Reba Khan. I'm 32 years old. And 5 years ago, my own father told me in front of our entire extended family that I wasn't his real responsibility. Before I tell you what happened next, if you believe family should protect you, not destroy you, make sure you subscribe. Because stories like this, they need to be heard. I grew up believing I was loved. We weren't rich, but we weren't struggling either. My father owned a small construction company. My younger brother, Hamza, was always the golden child. He got the best phone, the best clothes, the car at 18. I got be patient. When I was 16, my dad opened a college savings account for both of us. Or at least, that's what he told me. He'd smile and say, "Reba, don't worry. Your future is secured." I believed him. I worked hard in school. I graduated top of my class. I got accepted into a good university for business management. The tuition wasn't cheap, but I wasn't worried because my dad had promised. The day I received the admission letter, I ran downstairs crying happy. Tears. He barely looked at it. "We need to talk," he said. That's when my life split into two versions. The one before that conversation, and the one after. He told me Hamza had greater potential, that he needed capital to expand into real estate, that investing in my brother would bring returns for the whole family. Then he said the words that still echo in my head. "You're a girl. You'll get married. Why waste $180,000 on you?" My mom didn't say a word. I remember my hands shaking. I asked about my college fund. He looked annoyed. "There's no fund for you anymore. I transferred it to your brother's investment account. You can learn a trade. Something simple. Learn a trade." Like I was a backup plan. If you've ever been underestimated by your own family, pause this story right now and subscribe. Because you need to hear how this ends. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I packed a suitcase that night. My grandmother, my Dottie, was the only one who knocked on my door before I left. She handed me an envelope. I knew this day would come. She whispered inside was $12,000 in cash. She had been secretly saving for me since I was born. "I couldn't fight your father," she said, "but I can fight for you." That money paid for my first year of tuition at a smaller college. I worked 2 jobs to cover the rest. I lived in a shared apartment with 3 strangers. I survived on instant noodles and discount groceries. My dad didn't call once. Hamza's business? It failed within 18 months. But no one talked about that. Instead, rumors started spreading. Relatives told me my father said I was ungrateful, that I abandoned the family, that I was unstable. Every time I came home fried, I felt like a guest. Then came the final insult. 3 years later, I got married. My husband, Saad, is the kind of man who listens more than he talks. We built our life from scratch. No help from my parents. When our daughter, Noor, was born, I thought maybe things would soften. I was wrong. Last Christmas, my parents hosted a family dinner. It was Noor's first big gathering. There was a special chair near the fireplace. The grandchild seat, they called it. When I tried to place Noor there, my father stood up. "That seat is for my real grandchild," he said, pointing to my cousin's son. The room went silent. He looked at Noor like she was an outsider. Something inside me snapped, but I stayed calm, because that was the moment I decided I would never beg for acceptance again. And what I did next, he never saw coming. If you're still here, next will change everything. And trust me, it only gets deeper from here. Asterisk before I continue, I want to ask you something. If you were standing there, holding your baby, and your own father said she wasn't his real grandchild, what would you have done? Would you have shouted? Would you have cut him off forever? Or would you have swallowed the pain like I did? Tell me in the comments what you would have done in my place. And if stories like this hit close to home, subscribe to the channel, because what happened next changed everything. That Christmas night, I didn't argue. I didn't scream. I simply picked up Noor, looked at my husband, and said, "We're leaving." My father scoffed. "There she goes again. Drama. Drama." Like I was overreacting to my child being publicly rejected. But here's the part no one in that room knew. 2 months before Christmas, I had discovered something. Remember the college fund he transferred to my brother? The $175,000 that was better invested? It wasn't just unfair, it wasn't just cruel day, it was illegal. You see, my grandmother, the same woman who secretly saved $12,000 for me, had quietly added a clause in her will years ago. She had contributed to both college accounts, legally documented contributions. When she passed away the year before Christmas, I received a small inheritance. Along with it came a copy of her financial records. That's when I noticed something strange. Her deposits into my college account were clearly labeled as irrevocable educational trust funds. Irrevocable, meaning once deposited, the money legally belonged to the named beneficiary, me, not my father, not my brother, me. I didn't confront him immediately. I wanted proof, so I hired a financial consultant. Quietly. What we found was worse than I imagined. My father hadn't just transferred the money to Hamza. He had liquidated the trust, forged documentation claiming I declined higher education, and moved the full amount into his business expansion account. Forgery, misuse of trust funds, financial fraud. And here's where it gets even more painful. When Hamza's business failed, my father blamed market conditions. But the truth, he had used my trust fund as collateral for risky loans. When the business collapsed, the debt collectors didn't just come after him. They started investigating the paperwork, which means he was already under quiet scrutiny. Christmas wasn't just about the chair, it was about power. He thought I would always be the silent daughter, the forgiving one, the "it's okay, I understand" one. But something changed when I saw Noor's confused little face that night. I didn't want her growing up thinking she had to earn love. So after we left the dinner, I did something I never imagined I'd do. I called a lawyer, not to destroy him, but to protect myself. If you were in my place, would you have taken legal action against your own father? Or would you have let it go for the sake of family? Let me know in the comments. I genuinely want to hear your thoughts. And don't forget to subscribe, because the next part is where everything explodes. The lawyer reviewed everything. His words were calm, almost too calm. "You have a strong case." I didn't feel victorious. I felt sick, because this wasn't just paperwork. This was my childhood, my memories, my father. But then something else surfaced. Remember how my parents told relatives I was unstable, ungrateful? It turns out, they weren't just gossiping. They had emailed 2 of my early job employers years ago, implying I had financial irresponsibility issues. One company even withdrew an internship offer at the last minute. At the time, I thought I wasn't good enough. Now I knew the truth. They were trying to control the narrative, control me. But here's what my father didn't know. While he was protecting Hamza, I was building something of my own. After graduating, I started a small online consultancy helping women launch home-based businesses. It started with 5 clients, 5 within 3 years. I had over 200 recurring clients and contracts with 2 regional brands. Saad invested every spare rupee we had into marketing. We sacrificed vacations. We lived below our means. We built quietly. By Christmas of that year, my business revenue had crossed 7 figures, and I never told my parents because I didn't need their validation. But I also didn't need their sabotage, so when my lawyer drafted the formal notice regarding the trust funds, I didn't hesitate. It wasn't revenge, it was boundaries. 2 weeks after Christmas, a certified legal notice arrived at my father's door, and from what my cousin later told me, he went pale reading it. But that wasn't even the biggest shock. Because next, that's when he showed up at my house, unannounced, and what he said next proved he had never really known me at all. If you think this story is intense now, just wait. Before I continue, imagine this. You finally gather the courage to stand up for yourself. You protect your child. You send one legal notice, not out of revenge, but for justice. And then, your father shows up at your door like you betrayed him. If you were in my place at that moment, would you have opened the door? Or would you have pretended no one was home? Tell me honestly in the comments. And if you're following this story, make sure you're subscribed, because the ending will make you question everything about family loyalty. It was a Sunday afternoon. Saad was in the living room building blocks with Noor. I was in the kitchen preparing tea when the doorbell rang. Not a normal ring. 3 sharp presses. Aggressive. I froze. Something inside me already knew. Saad looked at me. Are you expecting someone? I shook my head. He opened the door, and there he was, my father, standing stiff, jaw tight, holding a brown envelope in his hand. He didn't look at Saad first. He looked past him at me, like I had committed a crime. I need to speak to my daughter. He said, my daughter. Funny how those words come back when money is involved. Saad stepped aside but stayed close. Protective, not confrontational. We sat at the dining table. Noor was still in the living room. Unaware, my father dropped the envelope on the table. What is this nonsense? He demanded. I kept my voice steady. It's not nonsense. It's documentation. You're threatening your own father over money. There it was. The emotional trap. If you were sitting there, would you have felt guilty? Or would you have stayed firm? Let me know in the comments, because this part is where most people break. I didn't break. It's not about money, I said quietly. It's about fraud. His face turned red. You think you can humiliate me like this? In front of the family? In front of the community? So that was the real fear. Reputation, not regret. He didn't apologize for transferring my trust fund. He didn't apologize for forging documents. He didn't apologize for telling employers I was unstable. He cared about his image. You could have talked to me, he continued. I laughed softly, and that surprised even me. Like I talked to you about university? I asked. Like I talked to you at Christmas? Like I talked to you when my internship offer disappeared. Silence. For the first time in my life, he didn't have a comeback. He switched tactics. Reba. He softened his tone. Family doesn't take family to court. Family doesn't erase their daughter either. I slid a printed bank record across the table. Grandmother's deposit. Labeled clearly. Irrevocable Educational Trust. Beneficiary. Reba Khan. You didn't just take my opportunity, I said. You broke the law. His hands trembled slightly. And then he said something that changed everything. You were never going to use it properly anyway. You've always been emotional. Weak. Weak. I built a company from nothing. I paid my own tuition. I worked double shifts while pregnant. But in his eyes, still weak. And that's when Saad spoke for the first time. She built something you never helped with, he said calmly. And she did it without stealing from anyone. The room felt heavy. My father stood up abruptly. So this is how it is. You choose your husband over your father. I looked him straight in the eye. No, I chose myself. If that line gave you chills, subscribe. Because this is the moment I realized something powerful. We don't lose family when we set boundaries. We lose control over those who benefited from our silence. He picked up the envelope. You'll regret this, he said. But before he could leave, Noor ran into the hallway. Amy. Who is that? She looked up at him with curious eyes. He hesitated. For a second. Just 1 second. I thought I saw guilt. But then he said coldly, no one important. And walked out, no one important. He didn't even claim her when she was standing right there. If you were me, would you still try to fix that relationship? Or would that be your final answer? Tell me in the comments. 2 days later, something unexpected happened. Hamza called. Now, my brother and I hadn't spoken properly in years. He was always distant, defensive. But this time, his voice wasn't arrogant, it was scared. You filed something legal? He asked. Yes. There was a long pause. I didn't know, he said quietly. Didn't know what? That the money was legally mine. That the documents were forged. That Dad used it as collateral. He genuinely thought the fund had been willingly reallocated. He sounded shaken because here's what I didn't know until that call. The failing business, the loans, the collectors, they were now circling again. And if the trust investigation moved forward, it wouldn't just affect my father Day, it would affect my brother too. Collateral damage. So now I had a new question to face. Justice or mercy? Asterisk. If you were standing where I was, knowing the truth could financially destroy your father and brother, what would you do? Fight fully or negotiate quietly? Because next is where I made the hardest decision of my life. And I promise you, not everyone will agree with it. Asterisk. Before I tell you what I chose, I need you to think carefully. If you had the power to expose the truth, if justice was finally in your hands, but pressing forward could financially destroy your own father and brother, what would you do? Would you burn it all down? Or would you walk away with your dignity? Tell me in the comments what you would have done in my place. And if you've stayed with me, asterisk. Subscribe to the channel. Because this ending isn't what most people expect. Asterisk. After Hamza's call, I couldn't sleep. For years, I carried anger like armor. It protected me. It fueled me. It kept me moving. But now, I wasn't fighting from a place of pain. I was fighting from a place of strength. And strength gives you options. The next morning, my lawyer called with an update. The financial irregularities are already under preliminary review. He said, if we proceed fully, this could turn into a criminal investigation. Criminal. That word hit differently. I imagined police reports, court hearings, public scandal, my father's name dragged through headlines in our community, and then I imagined Noor growing up Googling her grandfather. That's when I realized something important. Justice and revenge are not the same thing. If you've ever had the chance to hurt someone who hurt you, you know exactly what I mean. So I made a decision. I told my lawyer to schedule a mediation. Not a withdrawal, not forgiveness. Mediation. If you were in my place, Would you have even offered that? Or would you have let the case crush them completely? Let me know below. I really want to see your perspective. The mediation meeting was held in a neutral office. My father didn't look at me when he walked in. Hamza looked exhausted for the first time in my life. The power dynamic had shifted. My lawyer calmly presented everything. The trust documentation, the forged forms, the loan collateral records. There was no yelling, no drama, just facts. My father's lawyer leaned over and whispered something to him. He nodded slowly. Then, finally, he spoke. What do you want? Not how can I fix this? Not I'm sorry. What do you want? I took a deep breath. I want my daughter to grow up knowing her mother stood up for herself, I said, and I want the funds returned with interest. The room went quiet. Hamza's eyes widened. Interest? Yes, I replied calmly, because while you were building a failed empire, I was working to jobs. If that moment were yours, would your voice have shaken? Mine didn't, and that still surprises me. After hours of negotiation, an agreement was drafted. Here's what it included. Full repayment of the original trust amount, structured interest. Payments over 3 years, a written retraction sent to former employers correcting defamatory claims. And one more condition. No contact with my daughter unless initiated by me. That last one hurt him the most. But boundaries aren't punishments. They're protection. 3 months later, the first repayment arrived. I didn't celebrate. I invested it into a new educational fund for Noor, and I made it legally untouchable. Because cycles stop with someone. Why not me? If you're proud of that decision, subscribe. Because stories like this remind us that breaking generational patterns takes courage. But here's the part no one expects. 6 months after mediation, my father showed up again. Not angry, not defensive, just older. He asked to speak outside. I underestimated you, he said quietly. It wasn't a full apology, but it was the closest I'd ever gotten. I thought protecting the family name meant protecting your brother, he continued. I didn't realize I was destroying you. For the first time, I saw something other than control in his eyes. Regret. Do you think people can truly change? Or do they only soften when they lose power? I want your honest opinion in the comments. I didn't hug him. I didn't forgive everything instantly. But I said this. You don't get to rewrite history, but you can choose who you are next. And that was enough. Today, 5 years later, my company employs 22 women. Women who were once told they weren't worth investing in. Women who were underestimated. Women who learned to stand up. My father and I, we speak occasionally, carefully, respectfully, and or knows him, but on my terms. And that grandchild seat at Christmas, we host now at my house. And there's no special chair. Because love doesn't need hierarchy. So now I ask you, did I do the right thing? Should I have pushed for criminal charges? Should I have forgiven sooner? If you were in my place, what would you have done? Tell me in the comments. I read them all. And if this story moved you even a little, subscribe to the channel for more real, powerful stories about strength, betrayal, and choosing yourself. Because sometimes, the daughter they underestimated becomes the woman they never saw coming.